Hi people, welcome to the channel, it's Kieran here. Now if you watch the channel you'll know I've just come back from another incredible run at the Comrades Marathon. After doing the down run last year, I went back this year for a taste of the up run in search of my back-to-back medal. I went again this year with Marathon Tours and Travel, and that was a very smart decision. They make it very easy, take away all the logistical nightmares. It was another amazing experience and one that I'd highly recommend. The Comrades is a beauty and a beast, it's joy and it's pain. It's an ultra distance with a city marathon intensity. It empties your legs and it fills your heart. You want it to go on forever, but you also desperately want it to end. Now I've run more than 50 marathons and ultras all over the world, and there quite simply isn't a race that I think can compare with the Comrades for just this sheer explosion of joy and energy. It's really magic. Now you may not think it's for you, but I believe it's achievable no matter what your starting point. And boy, is it rewarding if you try and take that leap to go and do it. Now, if you are considering running the Comrades, I'm hopefully here to help. I always think the best person to teach you how to do something is someone who's just done it for the very first time themselves. That's when those first time fears are still fresh and you remember all the rookie mistakes that you made. Now, with that in mind, in this video, I'm going to share the most important lessons I just learned taking on my first Comrades up run. So let's get into it. So the Comrades Marathon is unique. It's a road ultra that runs between Durban and Pietermaritzburg in KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. Each year the race direction switches. One year you run up, the next year you run down. Whichever way you're running, there's a 12-hour time limit and there are various different time-based medals. And the cut-offs, both those things tempt or force runners to attack this ultra with the intensity of a regular city marathon. It's a tough one to manage, not least because whether you run up or down, you'll barely take a step on flat road. Luckily, what makes this race really special is also your secret weapon. The Comrades has the most electric atmosphere I think I've ever experienced, like no other race. It comes from the supporters on the route, but also from the camaraderie of your fellow runners on the course. It's a 12-hour explosion of joy, noise, dancing, singing, pain and glory. When the doubt kicks in and your quads are filing for a divorce, there are thousands of fellow runners and supporters out there to help you dig in, conquer the doubts and get to the finish line. Hopefully before that brutal 12-hour cut-off kicks in. So I said this in my down run tips video, but the same goes here. On the Saturday before the race, Durban's North Beach parkrun swells with international runners, big, huge crowds of people all trotting out a 5k along the shoreline of the Indian Ocean. It's a chance to see lots of familiar faces. You run past teams of South African runners doing their final shakeouts in their team groups. Get groups up to 50 to 100 runners all singing and dancing, moving in lockstep. It's like a carnival of running and it's proper goosebumps time. This is your first taste of that electric atmosphere that you're going to get on the race ahead. It's a chance to see what the famous pace buses might look like. You can also do the parkrun if you want, just don't do it too fast. My advice is just to head down here, run for a bit or wander and jog around and soak up the buzz at a very easy pace. This will give you some added inspiration for race day. So we stayed in Durban in a popular race hotel called the Southern Sun. It's almost a central hub for the Comrades. There's loads of people who are running and racing. It's like a mini HQ. It's just a short ride as well from the start of the up run, which is outside Durban City Hall. But because the race starts at 5:30 AM and it can be quite hectic getting into the pens, it pays to be there quite early. I went with Marathon Tours who sorted out our bus to the start, but we still had to head over there around 4 AM. That meant getting up at 3 AM and having a very early breakfast. It feels really odd eating at that time. But the way I did this, I treated it like any normal morning and ate my breakfast as usual. I also took a Veloforte energy bar and a small bottle of Precision Fuel and Hydration electrolytes to sip and eat steadily up until we headed into our pen before the race. Now, you're looking at around a 3 AM wake-up call, so the temptation might be to go to bed at 7 PM and try and bank extra sleep. In my experience, this is a fast ticket to insomnia, though. Trying to get to sleep makes those vital Zs more evasive. The brain starts doing all that kind of working overtime, worrying about how much sleep you might not get instead of how much you need to get or whatever. Instead, I think just go to bed when you're tired as you normally would. Maybe a little early. I think I went around 9 PM. I usually go to bed around 10. Read a book, chill, lie down and be restful, but don't invite the pressure onto your bedtime routine. you pretty much have to accept that you're not going to get the best night's sleep before the race. But don't worry about it. It's going to be a jolt when you wake up regardless. And the adrenaline will kick in and save you once you're up and about and ready to race. Familiar one, this toilet situation at the start isn't great. When is it ever at marathons? But as ever, it's also worse for women. So if you can do your main business before leaving your hotel, I would recommend it. That's why I get up nice and early and aim to get breakfast early so my body has time to do what's needed. If that isn't the case, basically you need to take your own toilet paper, take some anti-bac wipes or some hand sanitizer as well, but expect a bit of a battle to get into those portaloos. Now, you have to be in your pen an hour before the start, and the start can be very busy. It can be very, very hectic. There's a lot going on. It's dark. It can be cold, so it pays to be early. If you can drop your race bag at the expo the day before rather than the race morning, that is one less thing to worry about. It's definitely a good tip. Getting into the pen early is also a good way to soak up the atmosphere as well, which is absolutely electric, and you don't want to miss those anthems that play. Now, the uprun starts in Durban, where it tends to be a bit warmer than if you're doing the downrun starting in Pietermaritzburg, but it's still worth wearing a layer that you can discard. Some runners use those cheap painters onesies, decorators onesies. Others adapt bin bags. I took a super light packable Montaigne featherlight jacket, which was excellent for the job. And don't feel guilty at all about throwing away stuff. There are loads of children on the course who will happily take unwanted jumpers and jackets. Actually, if you've got something, they love it. If you take a spare buff or something, you hand it out on course, they'll absolutely love you for it. So yeah, that's a nice thing to do as well. Really important one here, the Comrades is a gun-to-gun race. That means the clock starts ticking for all runners once the starting pistol fires, not when you cross the starting mats like in other regular city marathons. That means if you're in a corral further back, it can take 8 to 10 minutes to cross the start line, and that means less time to hit your target goal. You'll want your watch to reflect that as well, so start your watch when you hear the gun go. Unless you want to take your own electrolytes, you won't need to carry your own water for this race. There are fuel stations every 2 or 3 kilometres with sachets of water, Coke, energy drinks and food. Taking a soft flask and stopping to fill with water and adding your own electrolyte tabs can be a good idea. It's hot, you will sweat a lot. This is something that's good to replace the electrolytes on the way during this race. Even though it's African winter, it's still very, very hot when the main sun hits and you've been out there. 30 k's to go is when it will really bite. Now, the Comrades uses little plastic water pouches that you have to bite the corner off. It's easy enough to use them, but it's worth knowing that's what you're going to encounter. Also, some of those might not taste great. I had a few that had a really strong mould vibe going on, so I advise sipping a little bit first rather than glugging it just in case. Fueling right for this race, as any race, is very important, and having a strategy is crucial. I'd recommend taking some of your own fuel and supplementing that with what's available on the aid station. Some people only use the aid stations. I prefer to use a mix. If you plan to use the aid station food, it will pay to train with it. Bananas, oranges, small salted potatoes are all on offer. Check those out, use them in training. Aim to eat around 60 to 90 grams of carbs per hour. Start eating early. Keep it small and consistent. If you find yourself suddenly feeling a bit grumpy and frustrated, it's a good sign that you might need to top up your energy. Also, word of caution, some of the oranges have been salted, so watch out for that. And I'd 100% recommend picking very carefully from the aid stations, because a lot of not so clean grabby hands pass through those things. A lot of people grabbing things. So you might want to take further back just to make sure you're getting something that's arguably a bit more hygienic. Also, don't be afraid to ask for help outside of the aid stations. The whole course is lined with tents set up by people helping run clubs or their individual runners. There are loads of supporters having barbecues too. So if you need something, ask. People are really very happy to help in any way they can. They will go and find it for you if you need it. So don't be afraid to call on help outside of the aid stations. Now, everyone I spoke to, everything I read in the build up to the uprun repeated this piece of advice. You have to run the first half like a coward. The 45-kilometre or so hill that starts this race has a lot of gradient that's potentially runnable, but if you get carried away here and push too hard too early, you're going to pay for it later. If you attack the first half of this race when you're feeling fresh and invincible, I really think it's going to chew you up and spit you out in the second half. Cramp is a big problem that a lot of people suffer. So my advice here is to focus on self-preservation, move with extreme caution in that first half, because anything you still have in the tank after 50Ks is going to pay you back bigger dividends than if you try and spend it in the first half, you know, burning it, fighting those early climbs. The best way to fill this bath is with a dripping tap. Now, if you watch the channel, you'll know I'm a huge fan of running on feel. I wear a watch, but I cover it and I turn off the alerts, and then I tune into my body, my heart rate, my breathing, my muscles. And every time I feel like I'm pushing into the red zone, I ease back to an intensity that I know I can sustain. I ran the Comrades Up the same way, and it really paid off. I wasn't chasing a target pace that I thought I might be able to hit. I ran according to what my body was willing to give me on the day. It resulted in a negative split, with my fastest 4 miles actually being my last 4 miles. And I believe that I got the finish time that my training deserved on the day, not the one that I thought I might be capable of. I walked to reset when I was in danger of overcooking it, particularly on the hills. And by listening carefully to my body rather than my watch, I was able to run a nicely controlled race where I felt strong-ish throughout. My stats show I rarely went above, into the really kind of high heart rate, and my pacing was pretty even throughout as well. I was slightly terrified of the idea of that 45-kilometre hill to start this race. It feels really daunting, but if you move slow with consistency, it actually passes surprisingly fast. I found it went much quicker than the more runnable second half of the race. Now, there are big pace groups here known as buses for all the key target times, but Comrades is a complex race to pace with many different ways to do it. Be warned that the bus might not match your pace strategy or your energy at the time. They can also be very hectic, a lot of people, a lot of noise. I strongly suggest using them if you need to be pulled along for a bit, but always run your own race out here. If it feels like you're digging too hard too early trying to keep up with a bus, let them go. Focus on what you can do at the time. Otherwise, you might find that they don't run the race that you want to run. Now, I said it in my down run video, and it's just as true here for the up run. While it pays to know what's ahead of you so you can manage your effort intelligently across the race, it's also possible to get too caught up in the details of all the hills that are yet to come. I didn't worry about learning the hills and the order. I just focused on how my body felt in the moment, the 5 meters that were in front of me. Occasionally I would ask a spectator or a fellow runner which hill we were on, but largely I didn't want to obsess about what I had to do in front of me. You've just got to run all of them regardless anyway. This is also where you need an ultra runner's brain. Forget the size of the kilometre markers or the hills you're yet to climb. Focus on the road that's right in front of you and concentrate on conquering what's right there under your feet. That will take the pressure off. It will release you from feeling of the enormity of the challenge, and it naturally creates a sense of momentum in the moment. Now, having said that, I found it helpful to ignore all the names of the hills, but at times I wanted to know where I was, or if the climb I was struggling up was in fact one of the bigger climbs or not. Asking the crowd standing on the sideline is just a great way to find out without really having to focus on what's yet to come. The up run will try to break you with 30 kilometers to go. This will be a bleak point. You've run a long way, been on your feet a long time, and it feels like there's a very long way to go still. You'll ask yourself all kinds of questions here. There is only one answer though. Keep moving with controlled consistency. Focus hard, keep fueling, and trust that those kilometre markers will fall if you keep moving forward, and you will find a second wind, probably at the top of Polly Shorts. Now, speaking of Polly Shorts, this is one people talk a lot about. It's a beast of a hill, and it comes deep into the race when you're close to spent. But rather than fear it, I actually decided to look forward to it as a chance to walk. Now, unless you're perilously close to your goal time, you really need to run it. Most runners, average runners, will walk it or power walk it. So embrace this as a moment to change your movement. Don't fear this hill that's going to come at a time when you're hurting. Now, people will tell you it's also all downhill from Polly Shorts onwards. That beastly hill that comes at about 80 kilometres. It's not. there are still sections that would make regular city marathoners wince. Granted, it's more downhill and flat than what you've just run, but the battle isn't done yet. You will encounter some inclines that are still kind of testing. One of the most remarkable things about the Comrades is just how warm, welcoming, open and chatty and supportive everyone is. Not just in the build-up, at the start and on the course. There's a really strong sense that everyone is in the same boat on this race, or at least on the same struggle bus, and everybody wants everyone else to succeed. The way I look at this, it feels like a solo challenge. You know, you're in a battle on your own, but you're in a team here trying to get to the finish line. You get some of this at races like the London Marathon, but this race isn't called the Comrades for nothing. That friendliness and community has turned up, you know, to the nth degree, and tapping into it is a really good source of extra running power when you need it most. Now, the Comrades is a race with loads of clever details and legends that make it magical. The race numbers are a great example. A green number means someone is a 10 times finisher. A yellow number means they've run 9 and they're now running their 10th on that day. These are good people to stick with if you need help and advice. They are not about to mess it up. International runners have blue bibs, which is another great conversation starter. Every runner has the number of races that they've completed also noted on their bibs, so people can see if you're a first timer, and they'll certainly offer you support if you are. Learning the code is a brilliant way so that you can tap into all the help from all the different people, or even offer the support on race day. Now, if you want more support and cheers from the crowds, wear a shirt with your national colours, flag of nationality on it. Runners from Oz, Canada, India, the USA, Ireland, all got huge support and energy from the crowds. Your name on your race number as well is also very small, so you could consider getting that printed on your shirt too. If you take energy from having your name called, that is. However, the support can get quite intense. It's loud, it's very, very loud. And if you're a runner who struggles with that when you get tired, or you prefer to kind of slip through unnoticed and find all of that a bit too intense, the opposite is true. I would avoid doing that and I'd wear something a bit more subtle. Now, both the up and the down runs have put me on my back for a good hour after the race with nausea, and I'm not the only one. Lots of people tend to sort of feel this race afterwards. So if there's something that you know fixes your post-run tummy troubles or gets you back on an even keel, stick it in your drop bag. I've learned that mine is a cup of milky tea, but I also packed like a spot of sparkling water and some salty crisps. Just things that I know are going to help me when I really need them. Now finally, the Comrades has a special magic, and the more you open yourself up to the warmth and the camaraderie, the more this race will give you back. The energy that you give out comes back tenfold as well. If you go in with your heart wide open, I'm telling you, the Comrades will fill it right up. So those are some of the things that I have learned from my first Comrades Marathon Up run. There are more experienced people out there, so go and check out other videos, but I hope you found these ones useful. If you're a Comrades finisher with good advice to offer fellow viewers here on the channel, please drop your tips in the comments below. Let's help everyone. If you know runners planning to run this for the first time, I'd love it if you would share the video with them if you thought it would help them. I've got an Up Runners tips video coming soon from other runners who've completed it. Keep an eye out for that. Subscribe and ring the bell if you want to know when that lands. I also wanted to say a huge thanks to Marathon Tours and Travel. Their Comrades experience was excellent again. I'll drop a link in the caption below if you're interested in checking that out. The one good thing about that is you had a ready-made team on the day. It was fantastic. A big thanks also to everyone who came and said hello to me on the course and offered support out in South Africa. It was a great experience, an experience I'll never forget, and I treasure those moments you all came and had a chat. If you want to see how my race went and sample the atmosphere, here's a video I'm popping on the channel now that you should go and watch. Otherwise, it's been an absolute pleasure sharing these tips with you. Congrats to all you Comrades heroes who finished it, and hopefully I'll get to catch you again soon. Otherwise, happy running, people.